Hi, my name's Mare. I'm a registered social worker and counselor, and I am also a widow and someone who is raising a child with complex needs. So I like to take my life experience and my learned experience in school and put them together to create content and also to provide a counseling service for you. If you're looking for a counselor, my information is down below. I see people in person, but if you don't live where I do, I can also see you over Zoom or over the phone. Last week, I was talking about therapy and some of the myths about therapy, and then I got a great follow-up question, which we're going to talk about today, and that is, how can you get the most out of therapy? I think this is a really great question because, let's be honest, it is not inexpensive to go to therapy, and it can be very intimidating. It can be exhausting and emotional and bring up things. But in saying that, it is the most rewarding work I personally have ever done. I've been in therapy myself for over a decade. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I would not be this person had I not seen a therapist for over 10 years. That's for sure. It's difficult work, but it's worthwhile. But also I want you to get the most out of it. So my first tip would be very clear on what you want to get out of therapy. Really sit and think before you even meet your therapist for the first time. What do I want to get out of this time and this money that I am investing in myself and in my future and in my health? So it could be like, I need help dealing with a tough colleague or friend. Or it could be, I am grieving a loss, or I'm going through trauma, I'm going through anxiety, or I need advice to get through this one event coming up. So there's a myriad of reasons of why someone would go to therapy. And like we talked about last week, it could be one session, it could be two, or it could be for years, just depending on what you're looking for. But being very specific, because then you can make sure you communicate that to your therapist, and then they can plan and shape your sessions around that goal. And in saying that, that brings me to my next piece of advice, is remembering that it's about you and it's not about me, the therapist. So it is your goals, your life. We want you to get the most out of what's happening, really holding true to what it is that your goals are and not letting the person sitting across from you sway you from what it is that you're trying to work through or get through. Like I talked about in last week, if you're seeing someone who is very persuasive and isn't listening to you, that's definitely a red flag. My next piece of advice is, as hard as it is, remind yourself to be open. In therapy, it is a safe space. It is a legally confidential space. There are only 3 instances in which I can legally break confidentiality with a client, and outside of those, I can't even tell your husband that I know you if you don't want me to. I can't even acknowledge you in public if you don't want me to. So it's a safe space in which I really encourage you to be honest and open and know that the person sitting across from you isn't judging you, okay? Like, don't be worried about what your therapist thinks about you. This is why you're spending the money to come and sit in this room, because it's non-judgmental and it's completely outside of your circle. So being open and honest and not holding back, no matter how bad you think you sound or whatever awful things, again, quote unquote, that you're going to be talking about, trust me, there's no judgment. So being open, it will really help you get stuff off your chest and work through it. My next piece of advice is to make sure that you speak up and ask questions in a session. So if your therapist is talking about some sort of science backing behind how you're feeling, or trying to teach you some sort of technique and you're not understanding it, please don't feel bad. Just stop them and say, I'm not following you, or I don't understand, Or can you please refresh that or reframe that? Because again, like, it's your time and it's your money and it's your health and your future. So if you're not understanding it, please don't feel like inferior. Again, a good therapist is going to be talking to you in a way in which you understand, or checking in with you like, hey, is this making sense? Hey, is this landing? Is this helpful? All these types of things. So also in that vein, ask questions. And also speak up if you're going down a road in which you're not comfortable with. You don't want to talk about stuff. You should never be forced to talk about anything you don't want to. Like, we're gonna push you a little bit, but with boundaries, right? Like, I'm going to try to get you to go a little bit further, but only in your comfortability. So it's okay to be like, I don't want to talk about that. And a good therapist will say, I respect that. Is it okay if we try at a future date? It's as simple as that. Again, it's not about me. It's about you and what you're getting out of it. And I really want to be clear on this. Like, there have been many times in which I personally have left a therapy session and been like, I did not enjoy that. I actually don't like her right now. That was really hard. But then, you know, like an hour later or a few days later, I'm like, oh, I totally get why we were talking about that. And it opens up something for me, or it helps me let go of something or see something in a different way. So like, we don't have to be friends. Well, we're not. This is a professional relationship. But like, I guess it's a boundary of pushing you a little bit and knowing that like, it's not always gonna feel good, but also if it's going down a route in which you're not comfortable with, say something. I hope that one makes sense. My next piece of advice is something that probably you're not gonna wanna hear, or I know I wouldn't, because I am the least patient person, but you need to be patient and trust the process. Don't think that you're gonna go into therapy and within the first session, you're gonna like solve all your problems, or you're gonna immediately feel better. It is quite a journey, and you can go like ups and downs and to get to where you're going. So be patient and trust the process. Know that even if you're going into a session and you're like, I have no idea what we're gonna talk about today, guaranteed at the end of the session, me or whoever your therapist is gonna be like, sorry, we're out of time. We've lost track of time because so many things unexpectedly have come up. So be patient and remind yourself that you are investing in your health and your future. You're investing in your relationships, your financial success, your financial future, your whatever it is that, you know, your mental health being more stable will then contribute to. And then my next piece of advice, which is very similar to the last, but has to be said, have realistic expectations. Don't expect to go into every single session and something like life-changing happen or some huge problem be solved. It can, and often we will, but you need to have realistic expectations. Also, don't expect that you're gonna go in and like every time you're gonna lay on a couch and you're gonna sob and, you know, you're gonna leave there feeling just terrible. Like, no. Therapy, again, ebbs and flows, but if you can be patient and have realistic expectations, you'll get further and you'll feel, I think, more rooted in the process and not impatiently saying like, well, I've seen you twice, how come my life isn't fixed, right? This could be a very simple tip, but it's definitely worth mentioning for sure. You can take notes to get more out of therapy, or you can ask your therapist to take notes, or you can say at the end of the session, like, hey, can you just like write a few things down? Because from my personal experience in being the person across from the practitioner, I will walk out of there and be like, I have no idea what we talked about, and I forget. So often at the end of the session, you know, like we'll recap and say like, what are some things that felt good today, or what were some of the things that, you know, stood out for you. But I will often just have her like quickly write it out for me so that I can reflect on it when I leave, because it's wild how much you can talk about and then completely forget everything that was said. So take notes or ask your therapist to take notes. They could text you after, like whatever works for you, but don't be afraid. Again, like the overarching message in this video is it's your money and your time and your health. So if you need them to jot something down, don't be afraid to ask for it. And then another thing about notes that I personally find very helpful as both the person on each side of the room is just making little notes in between sessions. So I will often find that I am that person when I walk into therapy and she's like, so what do you want to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. But throughout, you know, the space in between our last session, stuff will have definitely come up. So I just have like a running note in my phone of like, oh, I really want to talk to her about this, or this came up, or even to share, you know, wins with them, or ways in which, you know, the stuff that we've talked about in the session has helped in my actual life. And as the therapist, you know, again, I have no agenda. So you walk into my room, I'm not like, we're talking about this today. I'm like, what's up? What do you want to talk about? How do you want to fill the next 50 minutes? So kind of like having a running note in your phone can be very helpful. This leads us to my last piece of advice, which I think is the most important piece, which is, in order to get the most out of therapy, it's doing the work in between sessions. And let me be a little bit more specific. I don't mean homework, although some people really like a therapist to give them homework, things to work on, worksheets, you know, journaling prompts or challenges. And some people say like, nope, I'm coming here to talk to you and don't give me anything else to do. My life is packed as it is. But in saying that, you're going to get the most out of your therapy experience if you take what you talk about in the session and then work to apply it to your actual life. Like I said last week, it's funny in being a therapist, as our goal is to kind of like continually work ourselves out of a job. You know, as much as I enjoy seeing you, I don't want to see you for the rest of your life every week. Maybe we start doing check-ins and things, but I want to see you taking what we talk about and what you learn and then applying it to your day-to-day. Because if we come back to the very first goal in being mindful about what it is you want to get out of therapy, presumably it's something in your real life. So you want to take what you've learned in session and then apply it. And I remember, I don't think she'll mind me sharing this, but like when I was in the early days of being a widow, I was going to therapy at least once a week, if not twice. I had 2 therapists at the time and they were both still seeing me. And I remember going in just like weepy every time, of course. Like, I don't even know how I remembered to make my sessions or drive there because it was, you know, obviously such an unimaginable time. But I remember joking with my therapist and saying to her, like, do you dread seeing me on your schedule? Because like, you know, you're helping me through this most horrific time. And she said to me, absolutely not, because you do the work. I know that you are trying to take care of yourself or practice what we've talked about, or at least think about what we've talked about. It's not up to us to do the work for you. You have to do it. So you're gonna get the most out of therapy if you practice it in your real life, or at least just like think about it. Again, with our realistic expectations, not everything we talk about every week is gonna be like magical and there's gonna be huge changes, but it can be the smallest thing that like you and I talked about 6 weeks ago, and today you're like, oh, I get it, or like, oh, I can use that, or oh, I'm realizing that no longer affects me. Ooh, that's a good one. When you're like, that used to be so upsetting and now I don't even notice it, or something like that, you know? Anyway, I hope that this was helpful to the person who asked this question specifically, how can I get the most out of therapy? But also to you watching, please share it with someone who is thinking about going to therapy or is maybe in it and is frustrated. I would really hope that in doing these videos, we just kind of like normalize talking to someone, like Howie Mandel used to say, you know, like normalize seeing a therapist as you do your dentist. Like, why can't they be on the same level? Thank you for watching. If you are looking for some support, again, my contact info is down below. And as I like to say, life's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Please leave me other questions for future videos on therapy, mental health, well-being, whatever it is, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.